Welcome to History with Herodotus, where the boundaries of time and space converge to reveal the intricate tapestry of human experience. Today, we embark on a poignant journey through the tumultuous landscape of South Asian history as we delve into the complex and multifaceted narrative of the Partition of India. This pivotal event, which unfolded in the mid-20th century, would forever alter the destinies of millions, leaving an indelible mark on the psyche of a nation. The British East India Company, with its insatiable appetite for power and resources, had been steadily expanding its dominion over the region, exploiting the fissures between various princely states and leveraging its military prowess to establish a tenuous grip on the subcontinent. It was during this period that the seeds of discontent were sown, as Indian intellectuals and nationalists began to chafe against the shackles of colonial oppression. The likes of Ram Mohan Roy, a visionary Bengali reformer, and the enigmatic Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who championed the cause of women's education and social reform, started to stir the waters of public opinion, advocating for greater autonomy and self-governance. As the 19th century drew to a close, the Indian National Congress, founded in 1885 by Allan Octavian Hume, began to coalesce as a powerful force, championing the cause of Indian independence. The early leaders of the Congress, including Dadabhai Naoroji and Gopal Krishna Gokhale, espoused a moderate approach, seeking to negotiate with the British for greater concessions and representation. However, it was not until the arrival of Mahatma Gandhi on the Indian political scene that the movement for independence gained momentum. Gandhi's innovative tactics of nonviolent resistance, inspired by the likes of Henry David Thoreau and Leo Tolstoy, galvanized a nation, as millions of Indians from all walks of life began to participate in acts of civil disobedience, defying British authority and demanding freedom. Meanwhile, another significant player was emerging on the Indian political landscape, the Muslim League, founded in 1906 by a coterie of Muslim intellectuals, including the charismatic Muhammad Ali Jinnah. The League's initial objective was to safeguard Muslim interests within the framework of a unified India. But as the years went by, its stance would gradually shift towards advocating for a separate homeland for Muslims, a concept that would eventually become the cornerstone of the Pakistan movement. As the 1940s dawned, the Indian subcontinent was a cauldron of conflicting aspirations and anxieties. The British, weakened by the Second World War, were beginning to contemplate withdrawal from their colonial possessions, but the question of what would happen next hung precariously in the balance. Would India remain a unified nation, or would the communal fault lines, expertly exploited by the British during their reign, tear the country asunder? In the midst of this turmoil, the figure of Lord Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, emerged as a key player, tasked with the unenviable responsibility of overseeing the transition to independence. Mountbatten's charismatic personality and penchant for decisive action would ultimately contribute to the hastening of events, as the clock ticked down towards the fateful day when the Indian subcontinent would be irrevocably altered. As Lord Louis Mountbatten navigated the treacherous waters of Indian politics, he found himself increasingly entangled in a web of competing interests and irreconcilable demands. The Muslim League, now firmly committed to the creation of a separate homeland for Muslims, had become a formidable force, with Muhammad Ali Jinnah's charisma and unwavering resolve inspiring a sense of purpose among his followers. Meanwhile, the Indian National Congress, still clinging to the vision of a unified India, was struggling to come to terms with the prospect of partition. On June 3, 1947, Mountbatten unveiled a plan for the division of British India into two separate nations, India and Pakistan. The proposal, which would later become known as the Mountbatten Plan, envisioned the creation of a Muslim-majority state in the northwestern and northeastern regions of the subcontinent, with India retaining control over the remainder of the territory. The plan also provided for the establishment of a boundary commission tasked with demarcating the borders between the two new nations. As the clock ticked down towards independence, tensions began to escalate, with communal violence erupting in various parts of the country. On August 14, 1947, Pakistan came into being, with Jinnah delivering a stirring speech in Karachi, urging his fellow citizens to work towards building a prosperous and harmonious nation. The following day, India gained its independence, with Jawaharlal Nehru, now the Prime Minister of the newly minted nation, hoisting the tricolor in New Delhi. However, the euphoria of independence was short-lived, as the reality of partition began to sink in. Millions of people found themselves on the wrong side of the border, forced to flee their homes and embark on perilous journeys to reach safety. The violence that accompanied this mass migration was staggering, with estimates suggesting that up to 2 million people lost their lives in the ensuing chaos. One of the most poignant examples of the human cost of partition was the plight of the refugees who flooded into Delhi from the surrounding countryside. Many of these individuals had been forced to abandon their homes and livelihoods, arriving in the city with little more than the clothes on their backs. The streets of Old Delhi were soon filled with the sounds of wailing children and distraught mothers, as families struggled to come to terms with the loss they had suffered. In the midst of this turmoil, a remarkable figure emerged, Edwina Mountbatten, the wife of Lord Louis Mountbatten, who had become a tireless advocate for the welfare of refugees. Her selfless work in providing aid and comfort to those affected by partition earned her the admiration and gratitude of countless Indians, who would later remember her as a symbol of hope and compassion during a time of unimaginable suffering. As the summer of 1947 gave way to autumn, the situation on the ground continued to deteriorate. The city of Lahore, once a thriving cultural hub, had become a battleground, with Hindus and Muslims engaging in brutal clashes that left hundreds dead and thousands more displaced. In Amritsar, the famous Golden Temple, a sacred site for Sikhs, was transformed into a refugee camp as families sought shelter from the violence that raged outside. In October 1947, the Kashmir conflict erupted as Pakistani tribesmen, backed by the government in Karachi, launched a surprise attack on the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. The ensuing war would ultimately result in the division of the region into 2 separate territories: Indian-administered Kashmir and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This bitter dispute would become one of the most enduring legacies of partition, continuing to plague relations between India and Pakistan to this day. As the Kashmir conflict raged on, the international community began to take notice of the humanitarian crisis unfolding in the region. In 1948, the United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan was established to mediate the dispute and oversee a plebiscite in Kashmir. However, the Commission's efforts were ultimately unsuccessful, and the conflict continued to simmer, with periodic outbreaks of violence over the years. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of partition, both India and Pakistan struggled to come to terms with the devastating consequences of the division. The massive exchange of populations had left deep scars, with many families torn apart and communities destroyed. The Indian government, led by Jawaharlal Nehru, worked tirelessly to rehabilitate the refugees and rebuild the economy. While in Pakistan, Jinnah's death in 1948 created a power vacuum that would plague the country for decades to come. As the years passed, the legacy of partition continued to shape the relationship between India and Pakistan. The 2 countries fought several wars over Kashmir, including a major conflict in 1965 and another in 1971, which led to the creation of Bangladesh. The ongoing dispute over Kashmir remains one of the most contentious issues between India and Pakistan, with periodic outbreaks of violence and terrorism. Despite these challenges, both India and Pakistan have made significant progress in recent years, with growing economies and increasingly assertive roles on the global stage. However, the memories of partition continue to haunt the region, with many families still seeking justice and compensation for the losses they suffered during those fateful months in 1947. As the Indian writer and historian Khushwant Singh once said, "The partition of India was a trauma that has left an indelible mark on our collective psyche. It is a wound that will take generations to heal." Today, the partition of India is remembered as one of the most significant and tragic events in modern history. It serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of sectarianism and the importance of tolerance and understanding in building strong, diverse societies. The partition of India also highlights the complexities and challenges of nation building, particularly in regions with deep-seated historical and cultural divisions. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.